In this video, I'd like to talk about the parafollicular cells of the thyroid gland and the parathyroid glands, how they work in opposition to regulate our blood calcium levels. And so we're going to start with the parafollicular cells, also known as C cells. And remember, those are the cells that are found in between the thyroid follicles. So just taking a quick look at that A&P model again, the follicles make up the majority of the gland, but these C cells or parafollicular cells are located in between the follicles. Not all of the cells in between the follicles are parafollicular cells, and they're not like equally distributed throughout the thyroid. But as I said, they come from a different developmental location. And so what they do is they monitor blood calcium levels. And if the blood calcium level is too high, the parafollicular cells release a hormone called calcitonin. So taking a look at the notes, this is what I'm saying, that they monitor blood calcium levels, that if the calcium increases above the normal range, what they do is they secrete a hormone called calcitonin. Calcitonin, of course, the effect of calcitonin is going to decrease our blood calcium levels. And so I gave us a picture, and let's just look at this picture for a minute, see if this makes sense. So here they're using this teeter-totter analogy. They're saying that calcium homeostasis of the blood is between 9 and 11 milligrams per 100 mils of blood. So there's a normal range, and if calcium level goes above that, or if it goes below that, which we'll talk about next, we're going to take action to correct it. And the action that we take is secretion of a hormone. You might wonder, why do we care this much about calcium? Why are we using hormones to regulate our blood calcium level? And blood calcium level is really essential because the nervous system requires calcium. Do you remember the sliding filament theory from last semester? The release of calcium into skeletal muscle. So we need calcium for muscle contraction, we need calcium for mitosis, we need calcium for blood clotting. So calcium is really essential. We have to have calcium in the blood. We make sure that we do. But in this case, you know, if calcium level goes too high, it's the thyroid gland that's going to sense that. And in particular, remember, the thyroid is filled with follicles. Hopefully you know this already. And the follicles don't care about the blood calcium level, right? What we're talking about right now are these cells called parafollicular cells or C cells that are located in between the follicles that are monitoring the blood calcium level. And if it is too high, which, you know, you might wonder, why is it too high? It's dietary, right? We took a calcium supplement, we drank a glass of milk. I mean, it's not bad to have a high calcium level. As a matter of fact, during childhood, it's, you know, a good idea to have a high blood calcium because then you can use that calcium to build up the skeleton. So if we have a high blood calcium, thyroid gland releases a hormone called calcitonin. So here's the hormone. Hormone enters blood, and where that hormone is going to target, you can see, is the bone. And in particular, do you see how we're going to stimulate calcium deposit in the bone? And so you might remember that the bone forming cell is an osteoblast. That is the target of calcitonin. So when we have excess blood calcium, calcitonin is released. Calcitonin is going to stimulate osteoblasts to do what they do, produce osteoid, right? Lay down that osteoid on the skeleton, and then this calcium is going to deposit in that newly formed osteoid. And because we're depositing the calcium there, what's going to happen, you know, the effect is that the blood calcium level is decreased. Okay, so that is the story of calcitonin coming from the parafollicular cells. Now, in opposition to that, there is the parathyroid gland or parathyroid glands. We have about 4 of those. They're nodules that are located on the posterior surface of the thyroid gland. So they're not like completely obvious at first. And I pulled up the 3D model just so I could show you this. So there's the thyroid gland. We looked at that already. And so, I just want to show you if we rotate that, move this more to the center for us, you can see these nodules on the back of the gland. So that's the parathyroid gland. So the parathyroid glands are embedded within the back of the thyroid, and the number can even vary, but typically, so here you can see another one, typically there's about 4. So these are separate from the thyroid, but they're embedded in the back of the thyroid. We're to jump over to our PowerPoint. Here's the diagram of the parathyroid glands nested in the back of the thyroid gland. And we look at this in lab, and so the parathyroid gland is this purple island that you can see inside of the thyroid follicles. And this is kind of interesting too. So you can see it's not really like right on the surface, like, it's being like portrayed in models. So it looks like thyroid follicles are really kind of like embedding the parathyroid gland, which is actually the case. So it's not so straightforward to see as a color-coded picture. Okay, they're kind of tough. They're embedded right in there. Okay, so the parathyroid glands, what they do is they are also monitoring our blood calcium level. But here, what they do is they take action if the blood calcium level decreases. So if it decreases below the normal range, they secrete a hormone to correct it. And so looking at the analogy again with the parathyroid's calcium level would fall too low. Okay, so if our blood calcium level fell below where it should be, which this is, a problem, a chronic, problem, especially like with adults, because the way that we would keep that blood calcium up is just dietary again. So when our blood calcium falls below where it should be, it's the parathyroid glands embedded on the back of the thyroid that recognize that. And in response, the parathyroid glands release a hormone called parathyroid hormone. And parathyroid hormone is going to enter the blood, and it targets the osteoclasts. Remember that the osteoclasts break down bone. And so the way that the osteoclasts work is they basically shower the endosteal surface, like inside the medullary cavity. They shower the inside of a bone with like an acidic substance. It liquefies the matrix. And so because it liquefies that calcium, it releases the calcium into the blood. And then these osteoclasts, which are derived from white blood cells, you might recall that, then they phagocytize that demineralized matrix. And so they even clean up the mess after. But where we're getting that calcium is we're taking it from the bone. So after we dissolve it out of the bone, that calcium is going to go into the blood. And what that will do is it will increase our blood calcium level. And so the effect of parathyroid hormone is to increase our blood calcium level. So you can see that calcitonin and parathyroid hormone are working in opposition. So just to summarize, during childhood and while the skeleton is forming, to have enough calcium to build the skeleton is really, critical, and calcitonin is very important for that. But to sustain life, because calcium is needed for the nervous system to function, and the other examples that I gave you, parathyroid hormone is really like critical to life. We can't live with a low blood calcium level. If our blood calcium level falls below the level at which you can sustain the nervous system function, it's fatal. And so parathyroid hormone is definitely, very important hormone for us. And I also want to remind you of something we talked about in AP1, hormone called calcitriol. So you might recall that when sun hits the skin, so this is the epidermis, what it can do is it can take a cholesterol molecule within the plasma membranes of these epithelial cells and convert it into vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is cholecalciferol. And the reason that vitamin D3 is so important to us is because you need it to make this hormone calcitriol. So this is almost like, analogous to, in order to make T3 and T4, we need iodine. Here, in order to make calcitriol, we need vitamin D3. And so we talked about this in AP1 when we talked about the functions of the skin, because the skin can generate vitamin D3. Of course, this can be just a dietary intake also. Any which way, calcitriol, what it does is it enhances, it enables calcium uptake from the gut. And so this is very important, right? So in order to have calcium absorption from the GI tract, calcitriol is needed for that. And so you can see how calcitriol and parathyroid hormone are working to the same end in increasing our blood calcium level. And with that, I'm just going to switch over to a picture. I'm going to finish this video up to show you that if we had a low blood calcium level, that's going to stimulate the parathyroid glands to release the hormone parathyroid hormone. And what parathyroid hormone is going to do, enter into the blood, and number one, it's going to start to take calcium out of the bone. But here I just wanted to show you that that's not the only place that we could look for calcium, right? Parathyroid hormone will also target the kidney, because we can lose calcium, and we do lose calcium in the urine. And so what parathyroid hormone will do at the level of the kidney is it will cause calcium reabsorption. So instead of having that calcium spill over into our urine, it would take it back and put it into the blood. And then this is what we just looked at. It's also going to promote activation of vitamin D3, so we can make that hormone calcitriol, which is going to increase calcium absorption from the gut. So it's not just the bone that we'll look at. We'll look at, increasing our absorption of calcium from our intake, our dietary intake, and decreasing the amount of calcium that we're excreting. So that's all jobs of parathyroid hormone. Hope that makes sense. Thank you.